Happy Christmas week to you all. So it's good to see everybody. If you are a guest this morning, I want to encourage you to pull out your phone. I want to encourage you to just start scrolling through your Twitter feed or whatever it's called now, or your Facebook or your, what's the other one? TikTok, TalkTik, I don't know. Whatever it is you do, because I need to give a little update for our regular attenders and our members. In November, we shared with our members about our current kind of realities within the life of our church and our fundraising that we were getting ready to launch here with our Unique Light themed Pieces Worth It. And so I just want to share with you where we are and kind of our goal for the next kind of 30 to 45 days. So I want to thank those of you that have filled out your pledge card and turned those in, those of you that have began to support this effort financially. Thank you so very much. But I've got a couple of slides that will help you understand kind of where we are. How many of y'all like financial slides? I tried to make it as Christmassy as possible, okay? I'm even going to bring in some red later on, okay? But not in the bad sense of the red, okay? Just to make it Christmassy. All right, so here's the goal, right? So the goal for our Pieces Worth It this year is, in total, if you look on the far right, is to raise $322,000. Now, we started with $110,000 committed from our leadership and from those from some people outside of our church. And so far, $48,000 of that has come in, which is wonderful. And then we had a goal for our congregation, the general population, the Gen Pop. That's you. You're the prisoners. You're in the yard, you know. No, for our congregation, and we voted on this as a part of our budget, was to raise $212,000. And you can see that we have had about $70,000 currently pledged of that, which is a total of 39 pledges. And we've brought in, so you've given already $28,000, which is wonderful. And so our total over there, you can see on the far right, is we're at $70,000 that have come in, and we, of that $322,000 goal, and we have $180,000 pledged. So that's where we stand, where I stand right here, right now, okay? Now, here is the essential goal for January 31st, all right? So I'm a straight shooter, okay? So this is what we have to do as a church by January 31st. It just is what it is, okay? For Jimmy to sleep, all right? Our executive pastor, this is the goal, okay? And so first of all, I want to make sure you know you can fill out your pledge card on the back of your Connect card. It's right there. You can do that anytime. Drop it in the kiosk. You can fill it out online in the app. And so our goal was, as you saw on that slide, 77 pledges. We're about halfway there. And so I know a lot of you are thinking about it and considering it and praying, and that's wonderful, okay? So here's our goal. Our goal then for January 31st, where we really need to be to know that we can continue to move forward, is to have 85% of our goal pledged. So if you haven't filled out that pledge for the year, would you do that, please? And make that your gift today or this week on Christmas Eve, something like that. You can fill it out online. And so that helps us understand where we are as we plan for the rest of this year. And then to have 40% of those pledges received. We need a jump start because of the cash position of our church, okay? And so that's that total of $125,000, all right? So what that means, okay, are you with me? I'm kind of talking fast. Does that make sense? Would anybody like me to say that again? I just really don't like to do this on Sunday mornings if I don't have to, but I have to because I want to be here for a lot more Sunday mornings, okay? So that's why I have to do this. All right. So this is what this looks like then. Our final slide for the next 30 days is our leadership gifts. We have $15,000 coming in. I know for sure those are happening because I twisted those arms. I sent out the people to the doors to our leaders that have made those pledges. And so those are happening. And then our goal would be for our congregation in the next 40 days to give $40,000. That's year-end giving. It's above and beyond giving. That's not our regular gifts, okay? I want to remind everybody that's not our regular gifts. Our family gives our tithe, and then this is above and beyond, and we talked about that. And then that puts us then at our goal of having $125,000 and then being at our pledged amount of $265. That's the wrong slide. I made it too quick. I was too excited about getting red in there and making it Christmassy, okay? So that gets us to the 85% of our pledged amount. So that's where we are. So if you have made your pledge and you can give a portion of that pledge in the next 40 days to help get a jump start on this initiative, that would be most helpful because the biggest issue is not our giving. I'm sure everyone's going to give and we're going to make this happen. It's timing. That's the key, is timing. timing in our cash. So I want to thank everybody for your consideration. We've had some absolutely beautiful gifts come in and pledges come in, which is amazing. And if you have that Unique Light brochure, you can see on the back how it's broken down. If people are giving $25 a week or making a one-time gift of $10,000. My favorite gift came in from a person in our church who is living on a fixed income, is retired, and they told me that they were going to give up their coffee for a month, give up their coffee, one coffee, and give $5 a week. It was just such a beautiful gift, so wonderful. And so I've decided that I'm going to buy their coffee for the whole year because that's just amazing. But if we all just give a little bit, we'll get there. If some of us that can give a lot, we'll get there, okay? So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to myself, or if you know Jimmy, our executive pastor, happy to answer any questions. Again, the pledges themselves, just letting us know your intention is wonderful. That helps us out a lot in terms of our planning. And then fulfilling the pledge is almost better than making a pledge. I don't know if you know that or not, right? Fulfilling the pledge. It's like when you say I do, right? I do's nice, but it's really nice if you live out those commitments. How many of you all know that, right? You've been through a space where maybe the commitments weren't lived out, and you're like, oh yeah, it actually is a lot nicer when we take those vows seriously. Okay, so that's what that's about. You can ask me any question about it whatsoever, okay? Good, y'all hate me now for having to talk about that at church. I apologize, but it's the real world. We don't have a mothership. We're not part of an organization. We are the church, and we are who we are, and that's wonderful. And I want everybody to know this. In my heart of hearts, I want everybody to know this. Our church is absolutely amazing. We are a unique space. We are moving forward. We are standing against Christian nationalism. We're standing against Christian homophobia. We are standing for the love of Jesus, inclusion, and that's not always popular. In fact, there was a guy that we follow who was crucified because he just felt like it didn't matter whether you worshiped on that mountain or this mountain. He felt like everybody should be included. And so we're excited to be following that Jesus at whatever it costs. Right? Take up your cross and follow me. So we're living that out. We are going to have an amazing ministry here, an amazing work, and we're seeing beautiful, wonderful people find our church and make their way into it who are coming from some pretty tough spaces. And so I'm thankful to everyone who's making this church possible. You're wonderful. Big hug from me. Okay? Give yourselves a big hand. All right. Whew, now we can put that in the rearview mirror. Well, no, you should really keep that on the dashboard. Okay, that's a little bobblehead for you on the way home, all right? Pieces worth it, bobblehead. Put that on your dashboard. Think about that, all that good stuff. Okay, listen, how many of you have ever heard of the band Nazareth? You ever heard of the band Nazareth? How many of you are under the age of 30 years old and have never heard of the band Nazareth, don't care to hear the band? I understand, absolutely. Nazareth is a Scottish band. They're a rock band. They were formed in 1968. Where are my 1968 people? How many of you can remember 1968? You're like, yes, that was a good year, all right? 1968. I don't remember that year. I'm not going to lie to you, right? But they're known for this like really gritty, bluesy rock and roll sound that they kind of really pioneered, and it became very famous in the 70s. How many of you, when I say 70s, you're like, oh yeah, I remember the 70s. You probably went to church a lot in the 80s because of what you did in the 70s. I'm telling you that much right now. They became kind of internationally famous and really influenced like a whole genre of rock and metal bands, even to this day. So their most famous album, does anybody know their most famous album? Holler it out if you know it. Hair of the Dog, that's right. Who said that? Who said that? Raise your hand up nice and high. Own it. Who said it? You have to give double and pieces worth it. Very good, because you knew that. No, that's wonderful. Hair of the Dog. It was 1975 it came out, and it also had a little love ballad. It had a ballad on it, not really a love ballad, called Love Hurts. Now, the title track has this real iconic riff, heavy cowbell. In fact, I think that Hair of the Dog is probably the most influential piece of music on the famous cowbell sketch from Saturday Night Live with Will Ferrell. How many of you know? I actually think Hair of the Dog was the inspiration for that sketch. That's my guess. You should go back and watch it. You know, more cowbell, right? Nazareth influenced lots of bands like Guns N' Roses. How many of you heard of Guns N' Roses? Raise your hand up nice and high. You definitely need to stay in church, okay? Some of you raise your hands with no shame about that. You're like, no, I'm just kidding. You know I'm kidding, right? I'm not a moral theist. Who cares if you listen to Guns N' Roses? Okay. Now, so they even like Guns N' Roses covered hair of the dog. So some of you who are like Guns N' Roses fans, you have no idea that that's not even their song, right? Now, the song Love Hurts that came out in 1975, it was certified gold, right? Made it to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1976. It was originally written and recorded by a totally different band called the Everly Brothers, who I had never heard of. How many of you know the Everly Brothers? Wow. I guess I'm the loser as always. I really thought that nobody would know that band. Oh man, I listened to too much Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith as a kid. Holy cow. Wow. The Everly Brothers, like, who are they? I mean, ChatGPT told me the Everly Brothers. I was like, they must be real. I don't have any idea who they're. One more time, how many of you know who the Everly Brothers are? Holy cow. That is crazy. I have no idea who they are. I didn't even bother Googling them. I thought they were so obscure. Like, I got more important things to do this week than look up the Everly Brothers. We got Christmas Eve services, you know. Oh my gosh, ChatGPT led me astray. Okay, well, I guess you all know who they are. Let's just close in prayer. All right. But this song, Love Hurts, is really famous. It's been in all kinds of movies and television shows. Academy Award winner for Best Picture 1992, Wayne's World. It was in Wayne's World. I don't know if you remember that. How many of y'all know Wayne's World? Okay, so you are normal. Okay. I wasn't sure, right? Now, this music becomes popular, right? Music hits into the top 10. Why is that? Well, sometimes it hits because it's just like super catchy. And let's just be honest. Like, that happens because like Taylor Swift writes super catchy music, not super depth of meaning. Okay, Swifties, relax. I said it out loud. Okay, all right? We get it, T. You broke up with somebody. Whatever, okay. But a lot of times music hits that it hits that mark in culture. Why? Because it taps into a shared experience, right? Because the lyrics, the melody, like sometimes you get the melody and it becomes an earworm, but then there's like these lyrics that it's like, yes, I know it. And I think that's the case with this song, Love Hurts, right? If you've ever heard this song, you might know it, but it says, love hurts. Do you want to sing it? You all know it, you should sing it, right? Growl it out. Love hurts, love wounds, love scars. Right? I love it. It says that love, it marks any heart not tough or strong enough to take a lot of pain. Right? Like if your heart isn't tough, love is going to mark you. It's going to beat you up. The song says love is like a cloud. It holds a lot of rain. Love hurts. Ooh, love hurts. Right? And then it has this line that says, I know it isn't true. I know it isn't true. Love is just a lie made to make you blue. Right? Like that resonates. If you've ever loved someone or loved something and dealt with the pain that comes alongside of love, that song makes sense. Like how many of you know the pain and the messiness of love? We know this in our relationship. If you are a parent, you know this. It doesn't matter if you have the most perfect kids and the rest of us don't like you, right? You'll experience the pain of that, right? We know that pain, relationships, love. Now, why is it that love hurts? Why is something so beautiful and powerful as love? Why does it hurt? Why is it so messy in our lives? Well, a couple of reasons. Love exposes the vulnerabilities of our hearts. How many of y'all know that you can't love, you can't give love, you can't receive love without a measure of vulnerability? When you love someone, you open up your heart, you open up yourself to that person, you let your guard down. And that vulnerability creates a beautiful space for joy, but it also leaves a beautiful space that exposes you to hurt and to rejection and to loss. And that's what comes with vulnerability, a depth of personal connectivity, but also a depth of potential hurt and loss. Love also creates these high expectations in our hearts. Right? These high expectations. We carry these hopes and dreams into the things that we love, the people that we love. We carry hopes and dreams into relationships, long-term relationships. If you've ever been married, we bring that into it. And we think about companionship and fulfillment of all of these things we want in our lives. But here's the thing. I don't know if you know it or not, but sometimes our expectations aren't met with reality. And when our heart brings these high expectations and those expectations aren't met, we experience the sting of disappointment. And the sting of disappointment is oftentimes just as painful and deeply felt as that love when it felt so promising and so hopeful. And the reality is that love comes with high emotional investment, right? We have these high expectations, we become vulnerable, then we become emotionally invested, right? How many of you, let's just talk like for real, how many of you get emotionally invested in something and then you feel that emotionally in a bodily way? How many of you seen Wicked? Has anybody seen Wicked? Less, oh my gosh. More of you know the Everly Brothers than have seen Wicked. Oh, I've failed. I have failed as a pastor. Seriously, people. I've seen it twice. And my life is busy. I've seen it twice. And I cried at the same parts every time. I'm emotionally invested, and I am the Wicked Witch. I love it. That's what, if I ever got a tattoo, that's what I'm going to get. Wicked Witch, right there. And then when I pray, I can be that cool pastor who wears tighter sleeves so that just enough of it is exposed on the camera for the people online to know, ooh, that's an edgy pastor. And it'll say Wicked Witch right there. That's my church growth strategy, people. Tighter jeans and a Wicked Witch tattoo right there. See, I have to have fun today because I talked about money, okay? That's how this works, everybody. Listen, we get emotionally invested in people. We get emotionally invested. And the deeper the love, the more of yourself you invest. The more of yourself you give, the more emotion it comes out. It's why when you get into an argument, your emotions get high and your intelligence gets low, right? We don't need a fill-in for that. We live that one out. And when the relationship falters or it ends, we can feel like we're losing a part of ourselves because we're so emotionally connected. And the reality is, all of these experiences tell us that when we embrace love, we are embracing a paradox. We're embracing a paradox. Love is this paradoxical reality that it can be both the source of our greatest joy and also our deepest sorrow. Right? To love deeply means that we are taking a risk to experience both of those things, the highs and the lows. The deeper the love, the greater the potential for pain in our lives. The intensity of that positive emotion that we feel means that when something goes wrong, the negative emotion will feel equally intense. It's like the great philosopher H. Lewis said, to embrace the power of love is a curious thing. It makes a grown man weep and another one sing. Right? I mean, it's true. When everything you own is put in a box to the left, it hurts, as Beyonce would tell us. It hurts, right? It's crazy. If you're into more modern music, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars had a duet this year called Die With a Smile, and it captures the reality of like the emotional roller coaster that love will put us on, that love brings into our lives. And here's the absolute craziest thing of it all. Are you ready for this? I mean, if you thought the last 10 minutes was crazy, this is the craziest. When love hurts, when we experience that pain, when we experience that loss, that disappointment, when we experience all of that, the reality of the hate that lives in our world, when we experience everything we own in a box to the left, right? When that happens in our lives, what is it that you desperately need? Love. We're junkies. We were created to love. It's why when we are hurt so badly by it, we desperately need it from someplace else. And that is the absolute craziest thing about love. When we are at our worst, when we have felt the pain of it, when we feel the potential loss of it, when fear overwhelms us, what are we looking for? Someone to love us. Someone to come and sit with us. Presence as an expression of love, to simply be heard, to simply be seen. Today we're going to light the fourth Advent candle. It's the candle of love. And our passage comes from Matthew chapter 1, and it's the beautiful part of the story. In Matthew, I don't know if you know this or not, but in Matthew's version of the story, it's kind of about Joseph's experience, and it's the story of Joseph imagined. And then in Luke's gospel, it's kind of the story of Mary imagined and what happens here. And so in Matthew chapter 1, it says that this is how the birth of Jesus came about. When his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found with child through the Holy Spirit. It's a little controversial back then. She's found with child. And Joseph, who's her husband, since he was a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to shame, he decided to divorce her quietly. You see, they were legally in that culture together, that betrothal period. And it would be a time where like a person would go and they'd be betrothed, and then they would go and create space in their father's home, and they would go and get their bride, and they would bring their bride back, and there would be space. So that's why when Jesus says, in my Father's house there are many mansions for you. If it were not so, I wouldn't tell you, but I go to prepare a place for you to come back. He's drawing on an imagery that would have been found in love and in care and in concern. And so Joseph, in this moment, is experiencing the darkness of love, potentially. We have no idea how this marriage worked out, how he met Mary, but we can imagine that he cared for her, that he loved her, that he had thoughts and hopes and dreams for his life, and then this happens. And he decides, hey, I can't do this. What I thought life was going to be isn't going to be anymore. And so that was his intention, the text says. And then when that was his intention, when that was in his heart, when he was afraid, when he didn't know what to do, when he had devised his own plan, an angel appeared to him, came in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, don't be afraid. Some of the most important words we'll ever hear in our life, but oftentimes the people who tell us that really don't understand what we're going through. We often ask the question, by what authority do you tell me to not be afraid? But in this moment, in this dream, it says, don't be afraid to take Mary, your wife, into your home. I love that the angel has to say, don't be afraid. Why is it? Because Joseph is afraid. He's afraid of what people are going to think. He's afraid of what's going to happen to Mary. He's afraid of his future. There's fear there in his heart. And the angel says, don't be afraid. And then the angel explains it. It's very simple, Joseph. This story is crazy. It's no wonder why a lot of people go, I don't take this literally. It's really easy to understand. God got Mary pregnant. Like, I don't know a God. Who is this God? Right? But that's what the Holy Spirit came upon and conceived. This child conceived in her was through the Holy Spirit. And she'll bear a son, and you'll name him Jesus, because he will save his people from his sins. Jesus is the Greek version of the word Joshua, a Hebrew phrase which would be what he would have spoken, and Joshua means one who saves. And the angel says, and then the text says, all of this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. Behold, the virgin, which by the way is a misunderstanding of the translation from Hebrew to Greek. It actually, in the Hebrew says, the young maiden will become pregnant and will bear a son, and they will call him Emmanuel. Emmanuel, God with us. And so Joseph woke up and he said, makes perfect sense. I got it. No problem. Thank you very much for that dream. And he wakes up and he did just as the angel of the Lord had commanded him. He took his wife into his home. I have to believe that there may be some sentences that could have filled in between those two sentences. Joseph got up and immediately thought, like Ebenezer Scrooge, it's some bad porridge. Joseph got up and thought, oh, what? Joseph needed a day or two to process. And at the end of the day, Joseph trusted. He trusted that the love of the manger was strong enough to carry him in the midst of the messiness. And for Joseph and for Mary, undoubtedly in this story, it was a messy situation. And as we light the candle today, as we get ready to sing some songs, here's what I don't want us to miss. I don't want us to miss that the love of the manger is strong enough to meet us in the messiness of our broken hearts. That if you are experiencing a broken heart today, if you are experiencing the pain of loss, the love of the manger is for you. And the love of the manger doesn't mean that everything's okay. Doesn't mean that nobody's going to talk about you like Joseph. Doesn't mean that it's all going to be roses. No, it just means that it's strong enough to carry us. And maybe you're here this morning, or you're listening in, or you're tuning in at some time, and you are heartbroken over the hate that is in our world. And you wonder, is there a love strong enough to carry me through this hate? Maybe you're heartbroken over the circumstances of your life. There was a plan you had, a thought you had about your career or whatever, some area of your life, and that has not gone as expected, and your heart is broken. The love of the manger is for you. Maybe this morning you're heartbroken because there's a relationship in your life that is out of your control. It's not going the way you dreamed it, wanted it to. You've exhausted all of your energy and all of your wisdom, and you are absolutely heartbroken. I want to tell you that the love of the manger is for you. The love of the manger is for you to put our trust in, not that everything is going to be just the way we want it to be, but that we will get through it. And maybe you're heartbroken over death. Maybe you're heartbroken over a loss or a disappointment. The love of the manger is for you. And it's not because the love of the manger, when you walk out of here, that everything is okay, that everything is just fine. It's just that the love of the manger is the most powerful force in the universe. And when we're heartbroken, when we're experiencing the loss, when we're experiencing the pain, the one thing that we desperately need is love. And the one thing about our tradition that teaches us is that God is love, and that we can lean into that love. And in our everyday, normal lives, this faith tells us that the love of the manger can remind us that we are never alone in our heartache. Even when nobody gets it, even when nobody around us can understand it, even when people think that our hurt is trivial, the love of the manger reminds us that we're not alone, that there is a presence that is with us, maybe incapable of changing the circumstances, but is with us. And the love of the manger reminds us that life never goes exactly as planned. If everything in your life has gone exactly as you planned it from day one, I want you to stand up and walk out and never come back. Never give another dollar to a church. Never make sure that good work continues in this world. It never happens. We have our expectations, we have our plans, and everything's supposed to go this way. But it's interesting how life happens. It's interesting how evil persists and how we have to adjust and adapt. And love is that strength. The love of the manger is that strength that helps us adapt and adjust. And here's what I think is really powerful. The most powerful about the whole manger story, the whole Christmas story, what we're celebrating, is that the love of the manger reminds us that there is no mess that is outside the redemptive reach of God. There's no mess in our lives that we have made ourselves or that others have made for us that is outside the redemptive work of God. No pain that you have experienced, no heartache, no brokenness, regardless of how futile it was, how pointless it was. And trust me, there's a lot of pain and a lot of hardship that is pointless, that has no purpose. There's no intended purpose in your life. There's zero intended purpose. A very good friend of ours, 52 years old, passed away this past week. Was diagnosed 2 months ago with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 5 kids, all under the age of 19 to 14. God did not want that. God did not plan that. God did not need another angel in heaven. That's all bullshit. Sorry, I have to say it out loud. It is. But even that is not outside the redemptive power of love. Because when we put our hands, when we put our hurt in the hands of love, that love, that pain, that hurt can become sacred. Our wounds become sacred. It's why the wounds of Jesus are such a powerful image, not because they were necessary. I want you to hear me say this right now. I believe 100% in my the depth of my being that it was not God's plan or purpose for Jesus to die on a cross. That did not have to happen. That is the product of injustice. That is the product of our sin. That is the product of pain and hurt and fear. But the wounds become sacred, and the story of the resurrection of this one born in a manger who died on a cross is that the wounds that we experience, even death, can become sacred when placed in the hands of love. When handed over to a God that is love, our scars and our pain and our hurt can become sources of healing to others. But that does not mean that they had to happen, that it was God's plan for your life. I just don't believe in any of that nonsense. But I do believe deeply in love. And I do believe that your pain and your hurt doesn't have to be stupid. It can become sacred. And I believe that's why we have this beautiful story where Thomas says to Jesus, it says to the disciples, not until I see his hands, not until I touch his side. It's the wounds, you know? And when you look at your life and you think about those wounds, we can sit in them and we can get angry about them and we can, all of those things, and we should. There's nothing wrong with that. But do it in the presence of love. And someday, somebody's going to need to look at your wounds. Someday, there will be someone that comes into your life and your wounds will bring them hope and they'll be redeemed. And it won't make them any more pleasant. You won't be glad you went through it. No. Redemption isn't about that. Redemption is a recognition that God doesn't waste anything, not even our pain, if we'll allow God to use it. That's what's beautiful. And redemption is found in things like self-compassion. In the midst of our pain, in the midst of our loss, to acknowledge our feelings and to give ourselves grace, to be angry about the circumstance, to be angry at God, to be angry at people. Give yourself grace, acknowledge your feelings, self-compassion. There's redemption in that. Redemption is found in perspective taking, remembering that pain, while we don't ever want it, that oftentimes our greatest growth comes out of our pain. And our greatest learning comes out of our pain. It doesn't mean it's the only way to learn. It just means sometimes pain is just an amazing, amazing professor. Redemption is found in connection, when we take time to seek support from people who we trust to not have to word everything correctly, who we trust not to have to say, well, what are they going to think about me when I tell them how I really feel about this circumstance or that circumstance? Those people we trust, that we can just let our guard down. When we find that, those connections, redemption starts to take place. Love is felt. And in healing and time. Time does not remove pain. Time does not remove grief, but it shifts over time. The acuity changes over time. Clarity can come over time. And I do think we experience redemption when we practice mindfulness. When we are mindful of the present moment that we're in. When we don't ruminate over the past, over the people that have hurt us, over the things that have been done to us. If we stay in that past space, if we ruminate over that all the time, we'll never find ourselves in the present moment, in the opportunities that love is giving us right now. And so being mindful of what is happening around us and what love is doing through us and in us and around us in the present moment. And I do think that in the loss of and the pain of love, when we recognize that what we need desperately is love and that there is love available to us through God and through one another, that love, the love of the manger, the love of the Christmas story scatters the darkness of fear. We have this beautiful passage that says, perfect love casts out fear. And here's the thing, when we experience the pain of love, what we're really experiencing is the fear oftentimes of what am I going to do without that? Without that love. What am I going to do? What are people going to say? There's so much fear in our pain that love brings into our lives. And that's one of the beautiful things about a life of faith. Not a faith of believing in doctrines. Come on now. But a faith that believes in the power of love. It's why there is no song in the world about the doctrine of God that is more popular than a love song. Because doctrines don't change our lives, but love does. Love encourages us and moves us and walks with us. And you know what? In a lot of ways, love can't change our reality. It can't necessarily change our circumstances. It can't force anything, but it can just be with us. And that's what we need. So as we have communion this morning together, as we consider the love of God expressed in a manger, what is it God's inviting you into today? As you hold the bread and the cup, and everyone is welcome to these tables, to the elements. You don't have to sign a piece of paper, give in the offering, take a class, none of that stuff. You just really kind of need to be here. These are symbols that represent love in our tradition, a love that was expressed in the deepest way through a gift of Jesus giving his life for justice, for inclusion, for righteousness. And so as you have those elements in your hand today, I would just encourage you to consider, what is it God's inviting you into? Maybe on your way home, you want to open up Spotify and just give a good listen to Love Hurts by Nazareth and get a good cry out in the car. You do it. You do you. Sing it out loud. Think about whatever that is that's hurting you. Experience God's presence in that. Go for it. Spotify, Love Hurts by Nazareth. It'll be right there. Maybe God's inviting you to open up to a friend about a heartache you've experienced and some fear, and you sense, I've been asked, how am I doing? But I just haven't actually opened it up because I'm afraid of what's going to happen when I open it up. So maybe just an invitation to ruin somebody's Christmas with your pain. It would probably be the greatest Christmas present you ever gave that friend, to trust them. And I want to encourage you, if you're here today and you're feeling a heartache, I want to encourage you to come back out this evening for our Blue Christmas, where we just make space and time for our heartache. And to just hold the things that we have loved and lost, whether it's a person, whether it's a thing, whether it's an idea, whether it's a way of being a follower of Jesus, whatever it might be, friends, whatever you've lost that you just want to hold space for, and say it's okay. I would come back out this evening for that. So we're going to sing this song about peace. And part of the beauty of the peacemaking path of Jesus is not that it just creates peace on earth, but it brings peace into our hearts as individuals when we are experiencing the pain of love. So I invite you to stand if you're able to. The body of Christ broken for you, the blood of Christ shed for you.